Okay. I'm tempted to ask you to. Well, we've mentioned Wikibase and the fact that Wikidata is already an ecosystem well, it's kind of an ecosystem, at least from my perception, just because the platform allows, as you said, linking to external databases. This is actually unprecedented. To me, it's I've always perceived it as a solution to a problem that we all had. We all know that different institutions, especially GLAMs, but not only GLAMs, I would say governmental institutions, educational institutions, anyone that has their own database of metadata of something. It could be works of arts, or it could be books, or whatever, or documents, have their own system. And so the world always wanted to have just one place to have everything. And in that sense, I think Wikidata is fulfilling the promise of being a place where everything can, if you go to Wikidata, you can potentially, right, find links to everything else that exists in that realm. But there's a big but, right? Because when you go to an actual item and you see all these external links, that's amazing, right? It's like the external links in Wikipedia. But how do you really query it, and how do you really get to the nitty-gritty details inside the external databases? That's a different thing. And maybe that's why Wikibase is so important. So maybe you can talk about that just a bit more, and maybe show the students how it looks like, if that's even possible. Maybe show an example of a different Wikibase.
Yeah, we can. One. Yeah, okay. We can have a look at one. So, in general, you have two steps, right? One is being able to know where more data about a certain topic is. Like, let's say you're interested in Douglas Adams, and you know, for example, Douglas Adams ID in VIAF. But you don't want to stop there. You want to know, okay, what's the entry in all these other databases that there are, Project Gutenberg and so on. And that already is a huge problem that people had before Wikidata, because it's very hard to have this one central hub that connects all these very, very different databases. And I think we're fairly good at solving that part of the problem. The second problem you were talking about is about, okay, once I know that this other database also has data about this person I'm interested in, how do I access that particular database? And that's, I think, indeed where the Wikibase ecosystem will help a bit, because if you have consistent ways of accessing data in different projects, then of course it is much easier if they all share the same software underneath it, and you don't have to write custom code for each of them. But I think at the end of the day, we're still far away from this magical place where you can easily access all of the data that is linked in Wikidata. But who knows? One day we'll get there.
It impacts also querying, right? Because it's not only about adding the data to be on Wikidata and be linked in that sense, but then you want people to be able to actually ask meaningful questions and get the answers from in an aggregated way. So not only from Wikidata, but from the other databases, which I think we're only at the very beginning of really exploring. And maybe Wikibase would be an easier system to do it, because it will talk the same language, at least. At least in some.
And it's not just talking the same language, it's also about using, which isn't really a thing in a lot of the databases out there, right? That you empower people to contribute to that data and to build a community around that data. A lot of projects out there that publish data just publish it. But I think if we go to the next level and empower much more projects to open up and to allow their community to take part and expand their data, improve the quality of their data, then that's really going to be a game changer.
Yes, sounds like it. So can you show us maybe, before we go on to some other hot issues on Wikidata these days, can you show us an example of a Wikibase and maybe tell us a bit about the process that people have to go through today to start one?
So, yes, let me see if I can share my screen. Oh, this one. Let's use another one. Okay, so there are a lot of Wikibase instances out there already that collect data about a specific field, for example. There is FactRed, the one I wanted to show earlier, unfortunately couldn't, which is a Wikibase instance that tries to collect data related to humanities research. Or here, Lingua Libre is a project that is recording the pronunciation of words in many, many languages to help language learners, for example. And they are using a Wikibase instance as well to catalog everything they need to do, and then also contribute back to Wikidata. So we can try, let's try horse. And here you can already see they have the familiar user interface that you know from Wikidata, but they have adapted it a bit to better integrate with their project and so on. So for example, they have this audio recording. It's a recording of a word in the Oroco language, apparently. And there's a speaker who recorded this in December 2018. And they're collecting a ton of this pronunciation data to then help language learners understand how certain words in a different language are pronounced. And that's really cool and something completely different from what we do on Wikidata itself. But the software is flexible enough to enable that and make that possible, which is pretty cool.
It is very cool. And how would that then relate back to Wikidata? Like, what would be the relationship between Lingua Libre?
Yes. So Wikidata doesn't just describe entities in the real world. So let's say Berlin as a city or Tom Hanks as an actor. But it also has a second part, which is not items, but lexemes. And lexemes are basically machine-readable data about words. Similar, so horse, for example, you would have that it is an English noun, that it relates to an animal.
Can we just see a lexeme for a second in Wikidata?
Of course we can. Let me show you.
Lydia, can you enlarge the screen just a bit?
Yes. So on Wikidata, if you search in the lexeme namespace by just typing L:, for example, to make it easier, we have the English, we have this lexeme, which has the ID L1123. And it's an English noun. And then we describe the different senses it has. In English, it has the sense of a horse as a type of large animal. We link it to the item for horse, which is Q728. And we have different translations into different languages. But we also have a different meaning of this word, Jangje piece. I have not heard of this sense of this word, but you always learn something new. And then you have different forms. For example, the singular form of horse is, of course, horse, and the plural, horses. And then you could make additional statements about it to indicate, for example, how you pronounce horses. And then at that point, Lingua Libre would be the place that provides that pronunciation audio to Wikidata.
So when we go to the, I'm trying to understand, or rather to make it easier for our students to understand how Lexemes work, because I think it's another level of complication in the database in that sense. And while people are now used to having Q numbers and items that could be, in a sense, multilingual, right? How does it work with Lexemes? So if I'm now looking here at this horse in English, would I also be able to see it in Hebrew or in Arabic or in French? So how would it work?
So, for example, if we have the Hebrew word for horse with the meaning of a large animal, then we would add it as a translation here and link to another lexeme, which has the Hebrew word for horse and describes that. And that way we link the English word to the Hebrew word through its translation.
So in a sense, it's very different than the items, right?
Yes.
Because for the items, you have one item with a number, and we have different labels to manifest the same item. But here you're saying you will open a different lexeme for every single word in every single language, and then connect them.
That's correct.
Is the connection done automatically? Like if I create, what I'm asking is basically the question we had, the thing we used to have on Wikipedia, or the interwiki, right? We used to need to put everything manually to connect all the languages to all the other languages, but now Wikidata is doing it automatically for us. So if you connect it to one language, it connects to all the others. So what I guess I'm asking is, if I now connect the Hebrew and the English version lexeme of horse, would that then connect all the rest of the lexemes that are already connected?
Not necessarily, no, not automatically, because translations aren't always one-to-one, right? In the case of horse, it's probably fine. But when you get into more nuanced things and more complicated things, like colors, for example, the translation isn't always bidirectional, much less across many hops. So no, this is not done automatically, unlike in the items, as you say, because there we're describing a concept which translates better across languages and matches up better across languages.
And so does the system have anything that helps the users to know what to do next?
So,
like automated suggestions or stuff like that?
Unfortunately not, because so far the Lexeme namespace and everything around this on Wikidata is still in development, and there's still a lot of work to be put into it. But there are tools that help separate from Wikidata. So there's, for example, the Lexemes forms tool. Let me see if I can find it. Here. Which is a tool by one of my colleagues where people can create these entry masks for words. So for example, let's take an English verb. and then you want to provide a new word, and it helps you enter this word in the right declensions and so on. So with this example here, they sing every day, he sings every day, he sang every day, so that it's easier to put in the present version, the past version, and so on of this word. So that could be a way for people to start entering words in their language and start describing them.
That sounds like a really nice thing to do with students who are just starting out.
Yes.
To use Lexemes, to basically go to that tool, choose either a verb or a, what else is there? And do we have something in Hebrew? Let's see.
I was just trying to check. E, right?
HE. Yes.
Yeah.
I don't
so
think we
then
do.
Not yet. So someone could start actually creating those for Hebrew.
Interesting. I'll talk to Amir about that. He's our guy to stuff like that. But if I see correctly, it would depend on actually. For English, you have nouns, verbs, adjectives, and adverbs, and for each of them, if it was a verb, then it will have the different tenses of the language.
Yeah.
Okay, that's complex.
And for a noun, it would probably ask about singular and plural.
Singular and plural, yeah.
And in other languages, it's more complicated, then it would ask for more.
Interesting. Okay, so we need someone who actually knows Hebrew grammar and Hebrew well to create these forms. Okay.
Yes.
But okay, I want to go a step back. I know it's kind of backwards, but still, to those students who hear us talk about Lexemes, maybe you can say a few words on why Lexemes are so important. I mean, last year, well, not really last year, but last October during Wikidata conference, which was the second Wikidata conference ever that we had, I would say languages in general and Lexemes more specifically were a big thing.
Yes.
It was like a promise that the community was really waiting for. Can you say why Lexemes are so important? Because it does look very complicated to create them, and a lot of work will need to go into making that happen. So why are we making this effort in the first place?
Yes. So when you use technology today, then a lot of the technology depends on data, and to work, it needs data that describes the world. Who won that last Oscar? What's the biggest city in a country? And things like that, right? You need to have a basic understanding of the things in the world as a base of that technology. And that's what the items in Wikidata give you. But you don't just, to really support technology today, you don't just need that. You also need to help that technology understand you and communicate with you. And for that, it needs to understand language. And having a free corpus of machine-readable data about words to be able to do that is really the basis you need to build any kind of intelligent system that's supposed to interact with you and communicate with you. And the thing is, this data does exist, not necessarily free and open, but it kind of does exist for big languages. But speakers of smaller languages, even medium-sized languages, often don't have that and are not able to produce it without technology support. And that is part of what is so powerful about the Lexeme part of Wikidata, that anyone who speaks a language can start contributing to describing that language and help make technology work in their language.
Lydia, we lost you for one sentence, so can you repeat that last sentence? Sorry.
Yes. So it's really important that speakers of those languages are empowered to describe their languages, that technology works in their language. Because one big problem is that languages are dying, and a big reason for languages dying is that no one speaks them anymore. And if people aren't able to use their own language with the technology they use every day, then there's no reason for them to really invest in the next generation of speakers of that language and so on. So bringing technology to the level where it's able to communicate with you in your language, no matter if you speak English or Yoruba or anything else, is very important if we want to preserve languages. And I really think we do, because they're such an important part of culture and identity of people.
So you're talking about preservation of languages and basically the history of the world, but it does sound like we're doing also a lot of work to basically help machines.
Yes. Yeah.
So
and that's kind of the beauty of Wikidata, right? It's a place where humans and machines meet, and where we can help machines be less dumb about the world, because there's so much complexity in the world that other systems often gloss over. Take things like, does Taiwan belong to China, or is it an independent country? That's not a simple issue. And you can't just gloss over that. But a lot of systems do. And in Wikidata, there is a place where we can make machines less dumb and teach them about those different opinions about Taiwan being a country or a part of China, for example, and many, many other things in the world.
Okay, I think that for now, I think it should be quite clear why Lexemes are important. But I'm keeping it open. I'm curious, because Lexemes is kind of a new thing that we're now teaching, and I'm basically offering the students to ask us more questions if that was not clear enough. I know for us, once you're in the ecosystem, it is so much easier to kind of get what's happening. But for people from the outside who are just learning about it, this might be a bit complex. So students, please don't feel that you are dumb. You're totally not. This is a complex issue, and we're inviting you to ask Lydia questions and me, and hopefully help you get why it's so important.